everybody. Welcome back to another week. We had a really good conversation this week, me and my mother, special guest. We have such a special guest today, my mother, Lori Rhodes. We had such a good conversation today. We talked about finances and like tithing and offering and the finances with the church and everything. And man, I'm amazed. My mother has such good insight. And I'm not saying that because she's my mother. She really does have so much wisdom. And I have been blessed with the best mother that provides the most amount of wisdom I've ever had from a person. She would probably hate me saying that. But she has really been somebody that I could look up to. And she's truly somebody I want to be like when I grow up. I mean, I guess I'm technically an adult, but when I grow up, I want to be like her, and I want to just have such a servant's heart like she does, and she just takes care of people, and I want to be that way. And she brought out some really good things about finances and what tithing is, what offering is, and I think this is an important conversation to have because tithing is kind of a big word. It's a churchy's word, as some would say, but some people may not know what tithing is or what offering is or why the church needs money and all these things. And that's kind of what we had in this conversation today about finances. Is some of those answers we had, or some of those questions we had about that were answered. And it was a really good conversation. I really enjoyed being able to talk with my mom about things and just gain some wisdom from her. She absolutely hates being on camera, but she loves me, so she did it for me. And she loves the Lord, and the only time she'll be on camera is if it's for the Lord, and it was for the Lord, and anything to do with God, she is on it, and she is there. So I'm so excited for you guys to see this video, and grab a notebook, grab your pencil, get ready to have some insight of tithing and offering, and hopefully this answers some confusion. There's some confusion sometimes about tithing and offering, and the difference between them and things like that. So I'm so excited for you guys to see it. Make sure you like and subscribe and comment, and then do the notification bell also, because we want to stay connected with you. We want you to be notified when we post, and we want to have conversation with you as well. So if you have questions, you have anything to say, make sure you put them in the comments. We want to have a conversation. We want to connect with you in that way, and we are so excited for you guys to join in on us. So let's check her out. A very special guest today. So today we've got my mother. This is Lori Rhodes. She birthed me. But do you want to say anything about yourself first before we go, or do you just want to get started?
Well, for anyone that doesn't know me, I'm Lori Rhodes, Addie's mother. I am married to James Rhodes, have 3 kids. Addie's my baby, just graduated from college, so proud of her. But been a member of Faith Church since I was 4 when Faith Church started, so this church is my passion. So yeah, that's all about me.
Perfect. All right, so before we get to our topic, I have a game we're going to play. It has 3 questions, and answer them as truthfully as you can, and explain why you would answer them that way.
Oh.
Okay, and then we'll start talking about the topic.
Okay.
All right. So your first question is a deep question. So, you ready? Imagine you just won $1 million. What would you buy first?
Well, first I would pay my tithes.
Hey, that's good.
So that would be the first thing I would do. What would I buy? Well, being who I am, business-minded, tightwad that most people say I am, I would pay off all my debt and anything else that I thought was a necessity. And then I would maybe splurge on, I really don't know what. That's just too deep of a question.
You'd finish your house, maybe?
Yeah, well, that's a given. That's a given. I'm ready for my house to be done, but
yeah.
But if it's a splurge item, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just not a splurger.
Yeah. I think I would pay my tithe, like you said. And then I would buy a bunch of cameras for the church because we need cameras.
There you go. There you go.
That's my goal, is to get a bunch of cameras. Okay. So the next question I have is, if you had to pick a theme song to describe you, what would it be?
A theme song that describes me. I don't know. What would you pick
Oh, I
to
don't know.
describe me?
I don't. Well, the only song that's come into my brain is the one you want to be played at your funeral. That's the only one that's
Yes,
coming to
because we
brain.
do have this conversation quite often. I've already picked out all the songs and everything, huh?
Yeah.
Which one?
The international version of what's that song?
How Great Is Our God?
How Great Is Our God? Yes. So
Yeah.
I don't know that necessarily describes you, but that's
Yeah.
that it depicts you of how you.
Well, like I told you for my funeral, to me that's how I picture what I will be doing while y'all are at my funeral. Is I will be up in heaven, gathered with people from all nations, worshiping God, and I'm not, So I want y'all to feel what I'm feeling. So that was my logic behind that song.
It's very good. Very good logic. Now, what would you use to describe me? What would be my theme song?
Oh, good grief.
It's a hard question.
Well, we're kind of alike because we're so serious, and
That's
I'm trying
true.
to think of a song that speaks to that, but I can't think of one.
So it's not Party in the USA.
No, definitely not Party in the USA. Is there a song about worrying and stressing?
Yes, I'm sure there is. There's a song that's literally titled "Worry."
Okay, that would be
me because I do
Yes.
that. I
Yes.
definitely am a worrier, a worrywart, as you've always called me my entire life. Okay, so our last question is, what was the last thing you purchased?
When was I in town last? I've been at the lake, for a month. I was in town the other day. What did I purchase? Something for my grandbaby.
Yeah,
A toy.
a toy truck, probably.
Monster trucks.
Yep, monster trucks.
Dueling dragons.
Dueling dragons.
That's last.
He's
thing
very
I
big
purchased.
into the monster trucks.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't even know what I. It's probably something for my classroom. I don't even remember. No, I lied. It was those pigs in a blanket kolaches. I had that for breakfast this morning.
Okay.
So I guess that's the last thing I purchased. Random, but so talking about money and purchasing and things, our topic today is about finances, like tithing, offering, and things like that. What I wanted to first ask you is, what even is tithing? What tithing is kind of a fancy word, like something that most people may not know if they haven't been in church.
All right. How does David say it? Brother Pastor David says churchy's word.
Churchy's
Tithe.
word.
Tithing, in my humble description, is returning a portion to God. God is the source. He's our source for all things. He's our source for the income, the jobs that we have. If we're a farmer and we sow seed and we reap a harvest, all that we have, God has provided to us and given to us. And so what a tithe is just basically us saying, God, I'm returning a portion of the gifts and the blessings that you've given me, and I'm returning that back to you. And it goes back to the Old Testament. And God, asked his people to present an offering to him. And a tithe is a part of that offering. It's a portion of the blessings that we've received that we return back to God.
Yeah. So it's 10%, right? 10% of your...
The Old Testament references 10%, and that can be found in Malachi chapter 3. I would suggest reading that chapter. You can kind of see there where he talks to the children of Israel and tells them, to bring in from the storehouses 10%. And so that's kind of where that
Where that comes
originally
from.
goes back to 10%. But that's basically the standard, if you will,
Yeah.
that the Bible teaches.
Yeah. I like how you said that we're giving back to God a portion of what he gave to us. I've heard a lot of people say, like, why do we give to the church? Like, why are we tithing? Because God doesn't need our money. Why are we doing that? And it's, you're giving back a portion of what God gave you. I thought that was good.
Absolutely. And you know, another a scripture about why, to me, or who, to me, it's kind of, okay, God, I understand you gave me everything and I'm giving a portion back to you, but does that mean I have to give it to the church, or you know, who does that mean? How do I give it back to God? Well, a good scripture for that is found in, let's see, I've got it on my notes here, 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 11. And the NLT version says, if we have sown unto you spiritual things, is it a great thing if we shall reap your carnal things? And it's Paul talking about how they, as apostles, had sown into the church members' lives, or the Christians' lives, and is that not where should we not reap, you know, some of that harvest back from you? And so churches are fertile ground that we sow seed into.
Yeah.
And especially the local church, and it's very important. But the Bible speaks to where are you receiving your spiritual feeding from, and that is a good place to sow in to and give back to God.
Yeah. So you're not necessarily giving your money to God, but you're giving it to the people of God.
You are sowing a seed, yes. And the church, especially, again, the local church, because, you know, you actually know those people. There's credibility there. There's relationships there. You can see the fruits of the church's labor when you're giving into a ministry that you're very familiar with. And so that's why it's such a good place to sow your tithe into.
Yeah. So you mentioned something about where kind of, I think I don't remember how you said it, but when you're giving tithe, are you only able to give it to the church, or can you give it to other places? Is it more important to give to the church? How does that work?
I think tithe is something that you bring to the church. That's my personal interpretation of that. Tithe belongs to the church. Like I said, the place that you're receiving your spiritual food from is where you would sow in the tithe. You have other types of giving, like offerings. Some people call it seed money or seed offerings. That is over and above the tithe, or the 10% that is brought and given back to God through your local church. So offerings are something that you can give many different places and in many different ways. And then there's also something else that's another kind of a church word, but almsgiving, which is, in other words, giving charitably through, you know, benevolent organizations or whatever. So that's another way that you can give that's not necessarily tithe to your local church, but it's above and beyond that.
Yeah. So that was one of my questions. What's the difference between tithe and offering? And that's a question I've had, because I didn't know that. I knew that the 10% was the tithe, and I didn't know if there was a specific amount of offering that you had to give, or is it just something that you are able to give?
Right. I think offering is more based on what God is speaking to you to give, and that can be more than just financial. You know, there's other ways to present offerings to God in your serving and in your talents and things like that too, which is another conversation. So, but there's not a set amount on offerings. That's more of what you feel led to sow into whatever ministry or organization or whatever group that you feel led to do.
Yeah. So say somebody had the money for tithing, but they didn't have money for offering. So they could do an offering in a way that's not financially similar, something like that.
Yes, I definitely feel that way. There are acts of service that you can do. Serving in your local church is, to me, an offering.
Yeah.
Your offering of your time and your talents, and sometimes sacrificially. Sometimes sacrificially, and that's an offering that you are giving to God in service. And so I think people should never feel like, because there are situations where sometimes you literally don't have an extra penny.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people in that situation, especially, in times like we are in today.
Yeah.
But there's always a way that you can offer up through acts of service or something like that.
Yeah. Awesome.
And churches need that.
Yeah,
Organizations
definitely.
and churches need volunteers, and they need people to come in and to serve.
Yeah.
And so
There's
that
always
is
a
a great
need.
way
Yeah.
to offer.
Yes. So if you want to volunteer,
Absolutely.
we will absolutely take it.
Absolutely.
We definitely are always in need of volunteers. So one of the last questions I had, which is, you could go either way with this. What happens if you don't have the money to tithe? What would you do in that situation? I know people sometimes say, I don't have the money to tithe. What would you do in that?
I've been there in the past. God has blessed me richly, but I've been there where at times maybe I didn't feel like, because when you think about it, let's just say you make $2,000 a month. Well, 10% of that's $200 a month. Mm-hmm. $2,000 a month is not a lot of money when you're paying $700 a month rent and $300 or $400 a month utilities, and you've got all of these obligations. So I completely understand the feeling that I don't have it to give.
Yeah.
$200 is a lot when you're not, but I will say this: giving when it hurts, and I think I wrote this down because I didn't want to forget how to say it, but let me find where I wrote it down at, because giving when it hurts is kind of like worshiping when it's the hardest. In your hardest times, it's more important than ever to worship, but also to give.
Yeah.
When we do, we experience a level of closeness to our Father that is unlike any other time, and it's in that place that He can and will do amazing things in our lives, spiritually, physically, and financially. And we know without a doubt that it is His work and not our own. Mm-hmm. And, I say that in this question because I think we've all felt at times that we don't have it to give.
Yeah.
But what I guess I'm trying to stress is you can't afford not to give it.
Yeah.
Because the Bible says in Malachi chapter 3, this is one of the very few things in the Bible that God says, test me, prove me in this. Mm-hmm. You bring in what I am asking you to bring and give back to me, and I will do more with what you have left than you can ever have done with the 100%. You hear people say that God can do more with the 90% than I could ever do with the 100%. Yeah. And that, I know it from experience. I've experienced it too many times in my life. And what that means is some other things you may have to sacrifice some other things.
Yeah.
But I firmly believe, without a doubt, that God will provide what you need. Maybe not everything you want, but what you need. And He will show you things during that time of sacrificial giving when it's hardest. He will show Himself to you in ways that you can never imagine. And that may come back to you financially, because He said, I've never seen the righteous forsaken or his seed begging for bread. That's scriptural. Mm-hmm. That's biblical. He says, prove me in this. And so I would just encourage anyone who feels like they just don't have it, give something.
Yeah.
Sacrificially. There's many other things, there's other things that I may have to give up in order to give, but that should come right off the top.
Yeah.
I don't say that from a place of looking down on anyone who doesn't or anything like that. I say that from a place of experience, of having experienced so many times over and over and over in my life from a very young age of God taking care of me when I thought I don't have it, when I thought I can't do it. And so I say that to encourage people, not to try to force them, but to encourage you to try Him in this, to prove God in this, because He has never failed.
Yeah.
And so that act of sacrificial giving will bring about blessings financially, spiritually, physically. And He tells us to prove Him in that.
Yeah.
And so that's...
Isn't there a scripture in the Bible that says something like He will give back tenfold, or He will give back, I don't remember where it's at.
Tenfold, pressed down, shaken together, running over. There's so many scriptures. He's able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask.
Yeah.
And it's something, and I don't know if you had a question about this, but it's something that was on my heart too, because I know one of the concerns that I have had people ask me is, well, what if my spouse doesn't believe?
Yeah.
And I have personal experience with that because, as you know, your father did not come to church for the first 20 years of our marriage.
Yeah.
He was not a follower of Christ. And so I have a very special place in my heart, and I speak from a place of experience with that because I know it can be an issue. There are many couples and families that, maybe one spouse believes in tithing and the other doesn't.
Yeah.
Or maybe, there's a spouse that's not a follower of Christ and doesn't understand tithing. So I completely identify with that. And so I want to be sure and mention that I understand that, and I will just tell you how I approached it and what happened in my situation. That first 20 years, I did not, first and foremost, I did not pressure my husband about it. I did not try to say, well, I'm doing this, with our money regardless.
Yeah.
I feel like that would have bred some resentment and further, even some rebellion or something and a division in our marriage. So I did not pressure him in any form or fashion when he would ask me about it, because there were times he would say, wait, you're paying this to the church, and we can't make this bill, or we can't do, this thing that we wanted to do this month. So I got those questions a lot, and I would try to explain to him as best I could why I gave to the church and why it was so important for me to give to the church. Yeah. And I would only pay tithe on my income, the income that I worked and made. I did not ever pay it on his without his permission, because I felt like, again, that would cause some division or resentment. So, but I was faithful in paying my tithe, and when approached about it from my spouse, I would just explain it to him and say, this is how I feel, this is, in the Bible, and give him scriptures if he chose to read them or not. Was completely up to him, but I did not pressure him in any form or fashion. And what I can say is, over the years, and long before he ever came to know Christ, many years, not very many years into our marriage, he, just through watching and observing me, being faithful in paying my tithes to the church, and giving in offerings and serving in the church, he watched how God always took care of us. Not that we didn't ever have issues, because we paid what I call the stupid tax a lot for doing dumb things financially. We've all done it. We're no exception. That's completely different than God taking care of us. But God always provided an income. God always provided your dad with a job. He always helped me keep a job. He always somehow made a way to provide for us. And so your dad saw that. He observed that. And he, long before he ever came to know Christ, asked me to start paying tithes on his income as well. Wow. Because he saw the evidence. He saw God prove himself as a non-Christian in that. And so he insisted that I start paying tithes on his income as well, and he saw that through our whole marriage. And then as he come to know Christ and come to understand tithing even more, he still didn't understand it. It didn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. How can 90% be better than 100%? Yeah. It does not make sense, but that's the beauty of God. Yeah. So
you got to you step out on faith on that.
Absolutely. It's an act of obedience and faith.
Definitely. That's really good. Do you have anything else to add? That's all the questions I have for you, but do you have anything else that you want to add to any of the talks?
Let me see. I had some notes. So we talked about, that it's more than just money. Yeah. Proving God in it. I guess the last thing I'll say is, and it goes back to more than just money, is one of my favorite chapters in the entire Bible is James chapter 2. Yeah. And specifically 14 through 16, where it talks about how faith without works is dead. Mm-hmm. And so, as you said, it's an act of faith. Yeah. And giving is an act of faith. But don't ever feel or think that, well, I write my check, I stick it in the offering basket, I'm good. Because it's not just about money. God, again, like you said earlier, God doesn't need our money. Yeah. He does not need our money to do and complete His will and His plan for the church or for the community or for anyone. Yeah. We need to give. But it's important to not just to give, not just to write a check and stick it in the box, but to perform those works, those acts of service, those acts of kindness, those clothing the needy, supporting organizations that do those things, giving of our time, serving in the church, in the local church, and in the community. It's so important that we do that as a part of our Christian walk, because faith without works is dead. Yeah. And so it's not just about faithful giving, but it's about faithful service.
Yeah, that's really good. I'm glad you brought up that it's not just the money, it's your action too, the action step behind it. That was really good. Well, thank you for coming today.
You're welcome.
She didn't want to come, but here she is, and she did awesome, so...
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I love you too.
I love you too.